Hello and welcome to video lecture 21. Today we will continue our journey into talking about the alternative visions through which we look at cinema. Today we will talk about queer theory. So in the last lesson we talked about feminist theory. We looked at the three looks as outlined by Laura Mulvey. We also discussed Freudian psychosexual theory as utilized by the feminist critics. And finally, we also talked about a feminist counter cinema and its purpose and how feminist counter cinema can be used. As for today's lesson, in today's lesson we will be talking about queer theory and how it has evolved over time. We will be looking at some very important concepts of identity, representation, and also the idea of queer spaces as defined by queer theory. Finally, we will talk about gender as performance, and we will also talk about gender trouble. So what are these two terms, where they come from, and what do they mean? Now, what are the objectives of today's lesson? So by the end of this lesson, once you are through with this, you should be able to understand what is meant by queer theory. You would have also gained an understanding as to what is meant by identity and what is meant by representation, again from the point of view or from the perspective of queer theory. You'll also be able to comprehend what is meant by queer spaces, and finally you will be able to study the concept of gender as performance and gender trouble and what all of that means. So without waiting any longer, let's just start with this lesson for today. So first we'll talk about queer theory. Now before we do that, let us first concentrate on this word queer. What does this mean? Queer has always, like if you look up at the dictionary, one of the first definitions that will come across to you for the word queer will be, anything that can be defined as odd or strange or something that is peculiar or that is something normal or something that is out of the normal, that is not normal. Now this was of course always the meaning of the term queer. However, by the end of the 19th century, this word started gaining a derogatory connotation, and the connotation was that it was used to refer to effeminate men, or men who would indulge in same-sex relationships. So queer started developing this kind of a derogatory connotation as well. So this behavior, the same-sex relationships or men behaving more like women was considered deviant sexual behavior or deviant behavior, and these were the kind of people that were being referred to as queer people. However, the use of the term queer as a derogatory term really became prominent in the 20th century. In the 20th century is where people would be called out queer for having sexual relationships that were considered deviant, or having an identity that was not considered to be normal. However, something very interesting happened in the late 1980s, which was that this term, the term that was meant to be derogatory, that was meant to have negative connotations, it began to be reclaimed by the LGBT community. So when I say reclaim, what they did was that this word queer itself was used by the people belonging to the LGBT community to define themselves and to push their identities and to tell to the world that this is what they were. A very interesting and a good example of how queer became a positive affirmation can be seen in this name of a group known as the Queer Nation, which was formed in the year 1990. But the motto for this particular group was, "We are here, we are queer, get used to it." So this is the kind of environment that was now developing. By the late 1990s, people had started talking about their identities openly and confidently, and also trying to deal with the kind of stigma that was attached with it and telling people loud and clear that they were queer. Now queer theory also emerged somewhere around the same time, and it emerged as a field of study out of feminism and gender studies. So we will talk about what is the relationship between feminism and queer theory a little later also, but this is from where the queer theory actually came into being. What queer theory does is that it rejects any conventions and mainstream expressions of all kinds of behavior, whether it is related to a sexuality, whether it is related to a person's gender. So what queer theory completely rejects any mainstream expressions, any conventions that are associated with any kind of a behavior. It looks at identities that fall beyond the mainstream. So all the sexual minorities, all the all different kinds of identities that have always been at the fringes of the society. This is what queer theory looks out for. It looks at identities and behaviors that are considered deviant. As I said, same-sex relationships, they were considered deviant. So the queer theory, it looks at identities and behaviors that are considered to be not normal. Queer theory takes the position that identity is actually fluid and it's ever changing. Now, what is meant by identity is fluid is that a person cannot always identify oneself as being a woman or a man at all points of time, and that there's a constant change that will be happening in a person, and which is why this identity is actually fluid, and it is also not it is also not as extreme as just two identities, as being either a male or a female. So which is what it does, it pushes for non-binary. A binary identity system, of course, in our society is where persons are identified as either male or female. Queer theory actually pushes for a non-binary identity and a non-normative expression of gender and sexuality. Theorists who align themselves with queer theory, they challenge heterosexuality, and they talk about how is it that heterosexuality is actually constructed as normal by images in the media, and that it is actually not the normal that we are so used to. So it questions how the representation of men and women has always been limited to these heteronormative identities. So this is what the queer theory is all about, and this is what is at the heart of queer theory, that you can never pinpoint and that you cannot put labels on people. You cannot label people as only a man or a woman, but that these identities are constantly changing and that these identities are completely fluid. It rejects theories of identity that are based on binary opposition. So something like male, female, gay or straight. These are not the kind of identities that queer theory aligns itself with, and it completely opposes these binary system, and it argues for a space that actually lies beyond all of this, which is known as the queer space. So what queer theory talks about is that beyond identifying oneself as belonging to either of the binaries, there is another space, sometimes also known, sometimes probably a gray area, which is then known as the queer space. We will now talk a little in detail about what is meant by this queer space. So the queer theorists argue that people actually do not identify themselves into binary identities. This kind of an identification, binary identification specifically, is actually imposed upon them by the society. So they don't actually conform to any one side of this either or divide. It's actually always fluid. It's actually always moving. It's actually always changing, and there is this space outside these bounds. There is a space outside what is considered as normal, the gray area, so to say, where people do not conform to the black and white understanding of identity, and this space is known as the queer space. I have an example here for you, which is Sridevi in the film Mr. India, where she is dressed as Charlie Chaplin. As you can see, Sridevi is dressed as Charlie Chaplin. Now, there are various examples where either men have dressed as women or women have dressed as men in films, but the audience has still gained some kind of a sexual pleasure by looking at either the woman dressed as a man or a man dressed as a woman. But right now, even when you watched it, for people who already have a liking for Sridevi, they would have really loved, I'm sure they loved what Sridevi was presenting on screen. And in some ways, you do gain sexual pleasure out of looking at that. But what it does is that it doesn't really qualify you as being either gay or straight, because you know that you're looking at a woman, but this woman is also dressed as a man. So what is it or what part of this visual imagery is it that you're deriving sexual pleasure from? So which is why it reinforces that sexual identity is actually fluid. So just by deriving sexual pleasure out of looking at this particular imagery, it is not like, you know, you're going to be termed as a straight or gay. So again, the point that queer theorists always trying to make, that identity and sexuality is actually fluid and it's ever changing. It is never stagnant in one particular position or in one particular spot. Now we will look at another concept known as gender as performance, where gender is considered to be nothing more but just a performance. So this is a concept that has actually been given by Judith Butler in her 1919 book called Gender Trouble: Feminism and Subversion of Identity. Judith Butler is a very well-known theorist, and she has theorized on various issues like identity, gender, sexuality and power, you know, these being very important issues in a society. Now in this particular book, she argues that gender actually is not natural, and that it is a socially constructed identity, and that it's a socially constructed identity that people are expected to conform to. So gender, well, like what she's basically saying is that gender is not something that you are born with, it is something that you are imposed upon by the society. So the male and female behavior is actually not the result of biology. Now this is the argument that she's making in her book, that the behavior that we align, that we specifically align to, you know, this is male behavior or this is specifically female behavior, it's actually not a result of biology. It is actually something that is constructed and reinforced constantly by dominant images through media and through the culture. And therefore Judith Butler comes to the conclusion that gender actually then is not something that is inherent, but it is something more of a performance, because you put on a performance when you're acting like a woman or when you're acting like a boy or a girl. So it's a performance, and it's nothing that is coming, you know, from you internally. It is something that is coming from you because it has been that kind of a imagery or that kind of a behavior has been imposed upon you or reinforced upon you through the constant through the constant exposure in media and also across the culture around you. So, and another interesting point that she makes in the book is that she says that feminism actually subverts identity. So we were just talking about feminism in the last lesson also. So feminism is all about, you know, making sure that women get equal rights, making sure that women are treated equally, they are not treated as objects of desire or as just, you know, sexual objects. But here Judith Butler talks about the fact that feminism actually is not doing a very good job, because it is actually subverting identity. She says that in asserting women as a group, what feminism actually is doing is that it is assigning them some common characteristics and some common interest. And when that happens, feminism is reinforcing the binary identities. So it is saying, feminism is taking into account, or it is acknowledging that yes, the world is divided into males and females, and this is something that Judith Butler is against, because you know, as she says, gender is nothing but a performance. Gender is nothing but something of identity that you are supposed to conform to due to the dominant images around you. And therefore she says that feminism is reinforcing these identities, you know, because they're talking only of a specific group. And what it does is that, what feminism does is that it actually closes down the options for people to actually choose what they want to be. So, or to form their identities. So this is the criticism that Judith Butler has for the feminist point of view of looking at different perspectives. So any behavior or any representation that disrupts these culturally accepted notions of gender. So how is gender constructed, what should a girl be like or what should a boy be like, whenever there is any behavior or any representation that is not in cognizance with these accepted norms of what gender is supposed to be like, it causes something that Judith Butler terms as gender trouble. So gender trouble, what is gender trouble? Gender trouble is nothing but something like, you know, you will see images, you can see images right now on the screen, when a man with a heavy mustache and a heavy beard is dressed in high heels and a dress, or when a woman sports a beard and is also wearing a dress. So these are the kind of images that cause something known as a gender trouble. Because gender trouble, why? Because we have been constantly exposed to these dominant images of what particular gender should be like. A woman would never a woman is never supposed to have a beard, or a man is not supposed to wear a dress or high heels, and therefore the kind of reaction it generates is known, has been termed as gender trouble by Judith Butler. So here is a quote from the book by Judith Butler, where she states that there is no gender identity behind the expressions of gender. Identity is performatively constituted by the very expressions that are said to be its results. So what she's saying here is actually very interesting, slightly complicated to understand, but what she's saying is that when a child is born, the child is reinforced through the culture, through the people around him, through the images in the media about what his or her gender is supposed to be like, and therefore the child learns to express themselves like that. When she says so, but she says that it actually is not like that. The child is actually learning to express himself or herself or themselves like that because they are being bombarded by these images of what their expression should be like. So therefore identity is nothing but just a performance. A child learns to put on a performance that conforms to a particular gender, to a particular identity, and then later on it is these expressions themselves that are said to be a result of a child belonging to a particular gender or belonging to a particular identity. So let's do a quick summary of what we have talked about in this lesson today. So we have talked about queer theory and its evolution. We talked about the concepts of identity and its representation from a queer theorist point of view. We also understood what is meant by queer spaces and where are these spaces that they exist. Finally, we also talked about the concept of gender as performance and also what is meant by gender trouble. In the coming lesson, we will be talking about gender theory vis-a-vis film. So how is it that in the coming lesson, in the next lesson, we will be talking about queer theory vis-a-vis the film. So how is it that queer theory has affected or impacted filmmaking and the narratives that go along with it? We will also talk about films as queer text. So what makes a film a queer text? And finally, we will also look at some of the criticisms that have been made to queer theory. So this is it for today. I hope you've enjoyed today's lesson. I'll meet you the next time.